During the classical period, we see more public support for music. We see an increase of music for middle-class amateurs. More women are playing music in the home. We also see a rise of the piano, where a broader dynamic range is used, especially with the crescendo growing gradually louder. The three most important composers of the classical era are Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart and Joseph Haydn, and last but not least, Ludwig van Beethoven. Through these three wonderful composers, opera and vocal music, both sacred and secular, were still being written, but music for orchestra was being performed on a much broader basis. In art, we see a depiction of sensible middle and working classes. There was a movement in the decorative and visual arts, literature, theater, music, and architecture that drew inspiration from the classical art and culture of ancient Greece and ancient Rome. In literature, we see more novels, more histories being written, and less poetry. Mozart was born in 1756. By the age of 5, he was already a whiz at the keyboard. By the time he was 12, he had written his first opera. His father took him on tour all over Europe, demonstrating the amazing abilities of this child prodigy. By the time he was 36, Mozart had composed a half a dozen first-rate operas, 21 piano concerti, 24 string quartets, 17 masses, assorted chamber music and other solo concerti, and 41 symphonies. Mozart married Constance Weber, his landlady's daughter. Constance was every bit as irresponsible as her childish husband, and their housekeeping was a constant mess. Mozart was known to be a notorious bad boy. Haydn was born in 1732, and when he was 6, he went to live with a schoolmaster cousin in a nearby town who taught him music. He was a good little singer, but a bit of a prankster. One day he cut off the pigtail of the boy in front of him, and since his voice was beginning to break anyway, they kicked him out of the choir. Eventually, Haydn was offered a job at a place where he would stay the rest of his life as a court composer and Kapellmeister to Prince Esterhazy. This splendid castle was built in the middle of nowhere because the prince loved duck hunting. When Haydn died in 1809, a couple of amateur medical students secretly stole his head and put the skull in a little black box with a white silk cushion. In 1820, Prince Esterhazy II had the body exhumed, and when he found that there was no head, he tracked down the thieves and demanded it back. They had donated Haydn's skull to a Viennese musical society and gave him some other skull instead. It wasn't until 1954 when his head was reunited with his body. Beethoven was born in Germany in 1770. He quit school by age 11, and by 16, he was court organist to the Elector. By the age of 22, he had become quite a hit in Viennese society as a concert pianist, even though he didn't have proper manners. The aristocracy expected him to be subservient to them, and that was not going to be the case. He told one aristocrat, "There are and there will be thousands of princes. There is only one Beethoven." Beethoven was inclined to be very temperamental. One time a musician was complaining about a difficult passage, and Beethoven said to him, I can't think about your miserable violin when I am speaking to God." Beethoven was no less temperamental in restaurants. He was very absent-minded and would leave without paying the bill. One time he got so angry at the waiter that he dumped his plate of veal and gravy all over the man's head. Beethoven never married, but the biggest tragedy of his life was, of course, his increasing deafness. He began to notice it when he was about 30, and before he was 50, he had lost his hearing completely. As the years wore on, he broke more and more strings on the piano, pounding the keys, trying to hear the sounds. At Beethoven's funeral, a crowd of 20,000 lined the streets to pay their last respects.